Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today, I am really looking forward to our guest because we're not talking about business things. We're not going to be talking about how to use social media, how to use direct mail, what to do on your website, content creation, things like that. We're going to be talking about personal mental health, which to me is absolutely positively critical. You know, it's clearly one of the most important things, because if we're struggling there or having challenges, we're not able to function well as a business person, to make our business successful. And today more than ever, we've got challenges. I mean, you know, we're as we're filming this, we're right in the middle of the pandemic. And there are so many things that we're dealing with that was why I was really looking forward to talking with my guest today. So please join me in welcoming Jeff Tejcek to our program today. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, Deb. How are you?
Oh, doing just fabulous. But let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we'll do a deep dive into this because I really do look forward to this, and I think it's a critical issue that we need to be discussing. So there's a rising need for online businesses during the pandemic, as we know, but especially related to mental health issues and resources. Virtual EMDR, we'll explain what that means, has developed a proprietary platform to provide low-cost, self-guided behavioral health therapy. The technique, EMDR, which stands for Eye Movement Desensitization Reprocessing, has been used in treatment for 30 plus years, although the online use is relatively new. The program can help individuals with depression, anxiety, fear, isolation, PTSD, abuse, trauma, and addiction. Jeff Tejcek is the founder of Virtual EMDR. His company is born from his own need for resources that led to EMDR therapy, which aided in overcoming childhood trauma. Virtual EMDR became a reality way back in 2014 after exploring the best way to bring this therapy tool to anyone, anywhere, in a way that removed social stigmas and prohibitive therapy costs. The program has continued to grow since its beginning and has achieved a 90% satisfaction rate among subscribers following treatment. Jeff is a former journalist and currently lives outside the U.S., but hopes to return to Colorado in the near future, or the distant future, whenever. So again, Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, Deb. No, not that it matters, but it's Tejcek.
I'm sorry.
No, it's one of those impossible to pronounce last names. Nobody could possibly ever get it right. So.
And, you know, I deal with that all the time because people usually say Crier for my last name, and it is my married name, but it's Creer, so I understand totally. So Tejcek, all right.
But I'd mention it, so no
perfect.
problem.
I've changed the pronunciation in my little notes here, but tell us, I mentioned in your bio that you were a journalist and then you evolved into this, and it has truly become your passion in life. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I loved being a newspaper reporter. I was a crime reporter for a while and worked the government beat also in Colorado. And then eventually I moved on to writing about medical products more for a marketing company. And you know, at the time I was having some real personal struggles around having PTSD and trauma from my childhood. And also I needed to do some flying for my career. And I hadn't been on an airplane for 11 years because I was absolutely terrified to get on a plane. And I had a friend mention EMDR therapy to me, and I'd never heard of it before. I had no idea what it was. So I'm going to say this is somewhere around 2013. That's just a guess. I looked online. I found an EMDR therapist in Boulder, Colorado, and had some in-person sessions. They were really expensive, unfortunately, but I could not believe how well that it worked. On my fear of flying, on the PTSD issues I was struggling with, and I began to sort of watch what the EMDR therapist was doing. Started to understand the basics of the technique. I started to read about EMDR, and I got the idea. I said, someone out there can start a company, and someone can bring this online, and someone can teach people how to self-guide this process through software. And that's sort of how this company was born. I mean, we didn't really have a company yet. It was just an idea at the time, but yeah. So to your point, I'm incredibly lucky to have found something that not only am I passionate about and I have a career with, but can really help me to help other people and to help the community as well. So I'm very lucky.
You know, and we were talking before the program, you are in your current location because of your spouse. And of course, the cool thing is with an online business service that you provide, you can work anywhere. You know, anywhere you've got internet, you can work. And but I think more and more, and especially because of the pandemic, we are discovering that more things are going online. And one of the biggest things, at least here in the United States, that we have seen because of the pandemic are increasing online medical visits. I have a new doctor who I have had 4 or 5 appointments with, and they've all been virtual. It's a little weird. You know, I would like to actually meet her in person someday. And considering she's 5 minutes from me, it's the funniest thing in the world. But we're obviously chatting, you know, you and I online, all of these things. And so more and more things, more and more businesses and services are moving online, and we're getting used to that. So I love that you were kind of on the forefront of this with starting your business so many years ago.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was just lucky to have been the person that thought of it. And you know, when the pandemic started, in-person EMDR therapists were adamant, you know, EMDR can be done in person and it can be done online. And ironically enough, you know, then with the pandemic, they all sort of jumped over to our side, and everyone's EMDR online now. So virtual EMDR, my company, we really offer 2 separate products. One is for a non-therapist to conduct EMDR sessions on themselves.
Okay.
The other product we have is for therapists to conduct EMDR sessions with clients, just like we're doing right now. You and I are on internet video software. So it'd be this kind of a situation where I would be able to show you what's going on my screen and do questions and that kind of stuff if I was a therapist conducting the session. So a really lucky time for us to be an online business. You know, I'm really sad to hear that you know, some businesses have really struggled with the pandemic, and some, you know, a lot of businesses have even had to close their doors permanently. And we were lucky. I mean, our business actually grew with it as something that people really needed. So.
You know, and it is a challenge, you know, during this pandemic, because, you know, no matter where we were around the world, to some degree, we were told, you go home, you stay home. You know, and you know, I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. Georgia is one of the states where we have had, you know, some fairly high numbers. And as I was sharing with you before we were recording, we were just chatting. We don't have a mask mandate here, but, you know, we've been doing a variety of things. But one of the things is that we have the shelter in place orders for, you know, and originally it was, okay, everybody shelters in place. You know, my husband was at work one day and the next day he was here. I mean, you know, and that was the way it was for many, many people. And for most people that has been lifted, but I have a compromised immune system. And, for people who are, as our governor puts it, medically fragile, and so I'm delicate, or seniors, those are kind of the two categories. We're still in shelter in place orders. Now, I go out. I do restrict, what I do when I go out. And that for me, that has been extended again through September. So,
Wow.
Many people are still, working from home. And again, this is around the world, where companies are still shut down. Companies unfortunately had to close. So people are home just because they don't have a job. And so more and more we're just stuck in our homes, which that's good in many ways, but it has also caused so many issues because we are social people. We want to, and that really doesn't matter where we are in the world. And even people who I know are incredibly introverted people are saying, we need out, we need to go see people. And
Yeah.
so mental health issues are, becoming, unfortunately, more and more people are having them. They might have had some issues before this started, and this is now amplifying it, or they're brand new just because, they're not getting out and about. I was talking to one friend who is single and working from home. And she said, I go for days without seeing and talking to another person.
Yeah.
And she said, I thought that was great for about a month. Then for another month, it was starting to be kind of stressful. And now she's incredibly stressed. She doesn't, she said she started taking some walks and things like that just so that she sees people. And she's in one of the areas where it's less restrictive. And so she can get out and do things like go to grocery stores, but they're not having business meetings. They're not doing things like that. And so she's feeling incredibly stressed. And, plus then you have the all of the things that are associated with all of the businesses that are facing difficulties. So business owners, small business owners, entrepreneurs, we're having to find new ways to operate. In many ways, we might be the primary, source of income for our families. Speaking of families, now all of a sudden we have kids that we're having to homeschool that we never planned on doing. And so the stress level is just going up and up and up, especially when we still hear about, cases of COVID-19, when we don't really have, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 months, 6 months, a year, things like that. So that's where services like yours are so incredibly important.
And it was the same here in Singapore. I consider myself to be someone that has pretty good mental health, but our initial lockdown was a month. Mm-hmm. I was really struggling with that. Singapore is incredibly crowded. Almost no one is in a house. People in buildings and in condos and apartments. And by the end of that first month, I was not doing particularly well, being forced to stay home for a month. And on top of that, right at the end of the month, Singapore extended the lockdown for an additional month. So I was really having a hard time. And to sort of reflect what you were saying, I mean, I'd even heard from some friends. I have a friend here in Singapore who lives alone in a one-bedroom apartment with his cat. And he was just really struggling emotionally with being alone all the time. And then the cat got sick and died.
Oh, but no.
Yeah, nothing he could do. He was, he was stuck in the apartment. I will say this. I realize that the topic of this show is not giving people advice for, the best things that they can do in these times, but doing phone calls, meeting people online. So, for example, I go to a men's group where we talk about what's going on in our lives, and it's mostly expats. It's mostly from the UK and the United States. And that was moved from in-person to online, to on Zoom. So, I think that people really need to take advantage of what's out there to connect in whatever way that they can, even if they can't do it face-to-face anymore.
Right. So. Right. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those I thought, would have been good to have been the founder of Zoom. And you talk about a company in the right place at the right time. They just and I was talking with somebody yesterday and I said, do we even Skype anymore? Which that used to be the big thing, and there's lots of things, but yeah, we're finding ways to adapt. I started an online networking group and, way back in March. And it originally was just, hey, let's get together and chat. And it has evolved into more of a business type of networking group. We have a speaker, and so we have an educational component to it. There are people who have now started working together based on meeting each other in our online group. But anything that we can do to kind of get that face-to-face back, I think we need. And, because it as we've been saying, people really are struggling with this. So let's go more into exactly what it is that you do. And so it's EMDR. And so that's eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which I can obviously see why you have an acronym for it. But what is that?
Okay. First of all, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is the name that was given to it about 30 years ago by who initially invented it. And I suspect that we could go back in time, they would choose a more simple name for it, something less complicated and less confusing for people. I often refer to it as just eye movement therapy, which is also not technically correct because it's a lot more than eye movements, but that's a little bit easier to swallow than the longer version of it. Basically, in short, the idea of it, and this is a very shortened version of what EMDR is if you think about difficult emotions, traumatic events, things that bother you, while you're stimulating the left and right hemispheres of your brain, that can be done through eye movements, bilateral audio tones. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can change how you think about difficult emotions or traumatic events and start to feel a lot better about them. So, for example, a traumatic memory like being a victim of a crime, somebody gone on you, robs you, something like that. That can be a memory that can bother you years later. You're just trying to have lunch or wash your hands or do whatever, and you can't stop thinking about 10 years ago when you were robbed. Well, by doing some EMDR sessions, what can happen is you'll still remember what happened, but it'll be much more of a normal bad memory. It won't have that hallmark of being an intrusive memory of bothering you while you're trying to live your life. And that's the kind of result that you can get pretty quickly with EMDR therapy. It can also be used to sort of deal with when you're having difficult emotions. So, for example, we talked about the lockdown. If for people who are finding themselves depressed about the lockdown, having anxiety about what's happening, what's going to happen with my business, what's going to happen in the future, you can do EMDR sessions that just focus on those sort of different feelings, and you'll find that you're feeling a lot better very soon. So that's an overview of what EMDR is. Now, what we do, virtual EMDR, is very different, though, than the kind of EMDR that therapists have been doing over the past 30 years or so. So that's sort of an overview of what EMDR is.
Okay. Well, and, I want to emphasize to people that there are obviously times when you need to see a therapist, when you need to, when you need assistance. I mean, and especially if there's something, say if you're feeling suicidal or something, this is a great tool, and it may be part of the process, but you also may very well need outside assistance, and so we want to emphasize that. But this is something that it was interesting when I was reading your website. It is, we all struggle with things. to some degree, and pandemic aside, there are just times where we get stressed out. Maybe it's test anxiety, maybe it's maybe you're having trouble in relationships. I did hear today that the divorce rates are up, which didn't surprise me. I mean, a lot of people got really used to their spouses not spending a lot of time with them, and now they're stuck with them.
Yeah.
But and then there are clearly much more traumatic things like PTSD and things like that. So, how would someone get started? I mean, how would they even think, well, gosh, Jeff, this is something that I need to be doing?
Yeah. So there's a few things there. So first, let me say that historically EMDR was used for PTSD, and it was started just working on the military community.
Mm-hmm.
And then the therapy community figured out that there were a lot of other applications, EMDR, addiction,
Mm-hmm.
depression, anxiety. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Now that's in-person EMDR sessions. And the way that works is you'll go to a therapist's office, let's say 6 times. The first couple of times you won't even do EMDR, 6 1-hour appointments. The program that we created, Virtual EMDR, is a self-guided program. You do it by yourself at home when you have some time or when symptoms, and that's one of the great things about it is if you're having problems and your EMDR session with your therapist is not until Thursday next week, well, too bad. You have to sit and wait
Right.
work on your stuff. But with our self-guided program, you can work on it right now. And the way that our program works is basically right on your screen. It'll ask you questions. It'll say right on there, hi, Deb, how are you feeling today? And you type your answer, and then it'll say, okay, well, what kind of thing do you want to work on? Type in your answer. When you think about these items, where do you feel the sensation or the emotion in your body?
So if you're like, getting a headache or getting all tense, things like that.
Sure. I mean, whatever you want to work on. Like, so for, a good example would be, you could type on there something like, I'm feeling pretty depressed. I lost my job for some reason. Think about it. I have tears, whatever it is, but formulate the exact thing that you want to work on by answering the questions. You use the virtual EMDR eye movement software, which means that there's going to be moving visual objects on your screen. Wear headphones because there are going to be tones that go from side to side.
Oh, okay. So my one earpiece wouldn't work. I'd have to use headphones. Okay.
Exactly, because you want to have bilateral stimulation. You want to be your tones moving from side to side. And again, a really short version of EMDR is when you think about bad stuff while you process, while you stimulate the hemispheres of your brain, your starts to react to those difficult feelings or past events in a different way. So you start to feel differently about them. So long story short, our program has allowed people to have access to EMDR sessions when they need them. And then you can go back and talk about the lockdown again. I mean, where they can just do spot sessions whenever they need to. So really quick, I mean, speaking for myself personally, I really like my wife. She is a great person. She's easy to get along with. But when we were locked down together for 2 months, there were a couple times where, we just went to war. And one of the things that I find with virtual EMDR is I do sessions on myself periodically. I can step myself down from that emotional ladder quite easily by doing an EMDR session on myself. So
right. Well, and as you said, it can be at any time during the day. I would imagine for many people, it's something, they might have a bad dream or, something. So it's in the middle of the night and they need to calm themselves down or they see something happen. And, and I like that you say that it doesn't make whatever that memory was go away, because as traumatic, as horrible as those memories are, I think they're still part of us. And in some ways we still kind of need those because of who we are, but we just need to, as you said, we need to know how to deal with them differently. You mentioned, being a victim of crime. is maybe a great example where,
Yeah.
you're going to be more conscious of who's around you, what's going on. So that's a good thing, but you don't want to be terrified to walk down a street in the dark.
Exactly. And that's such a perfect example for how EMDR, in this case, virtual EMDR, works. A hallmark of traumatic memory is that it continues to bother you. It continues to be something that you feel is a threat, even though it happened years ago. And for example, let's say you're afraid to go outside and afraid to be around the city because you were a victim of a crime, and you're worried that it's going to happen again. Now, you understand that rationally, it's statistically unlikely it's going to happen. But in these situations, all the rational thought in the world is not going to happen. Well, the way that EMDR works is it really helps you sort of normalize those bad memories. I like to say that it helps the brain digest those kind of thoughts and put them in the appropriate cabinet in the back of your brain. So that way, next time you are out walking around in the city or something like that, maybe you'll be aware of the possibility that it could happen, but it just sort of be like anything else. Like you could get in an auto accident, or you could be struck by lightning, and it won't be a pleasant thing to think when you were a victim of a crime, but it won't have those hallmarks of traumatic memory anymore. And what's pretty great about this is traditional talk therapy, you can spend years talking to someone about your past and what happened, and here's your story, and here's where you came from, and all that kind of stuff. And EMDR doesn't work that way at all. And what I mean, if you have something that you want to work through, if you have something you want to focus on, most people really start with virtual EMDR, for example, really start getting permanent results after to 6, 20 or 30-minute sessions that they do on their own. So you can really change how you're feeling about things, anxiety, compulsive behaviors in a reasonably quick period of time. Unlike, again, more traditional talk therapy, which you can spend years working on that stuff.
Well, and sometimes this is just purely, anecdotal. Sometimes I think therapists like you to keep coming back, so they, and of course that's just from watching it on TV. We'll just put it that way. But it is incredible the power that our brain has over our reactions, whether it's something, traumatic or not. I have a friend of mine is a hypnotherapist, and I have seen her for pain issues, and some things like that. And one of the things I happened to mention to her one time was, I'm horrible remembering people's names. Yes. And she looks at me and she laughs. And I mean, in normal times, I could easily meet 100 people a week at networking events and not remember a single name. Yes, so I told her, I said, and of course she looks at me and she laughs and she says, well, first of all, because you tell yourself you're bad at remembering names, you're going to be bad at remembering names. And, and so she worked through things, but yeah, I mean, part of what I have done with her are breathing exercises and things like that. And I actually used some of that earlier this week. I broke a tooth, had to go have, emergency dental work. Luckily our dentists are back open here. But, and I am not at all traumatized by dentists. I'm actually one of those people who, when I was a little kid, had a really, really good dentist. And so I learned very early on not to be afraid, but I know, for many people, going to a dentist is not a good thing. Going to a doctor is not a good thing. But, so as, she was having to numb, and this was not good because it was my back molar. So she was having to really get in there and numb. I was doing breathing exercises, not only to focus my brain, but because, you get in those situations, you hold your breath, you're going to pass out. But, just breathing and thinking through these things. And I closed my eyes. I mean, that was one of the biggies, so that I wasn't seeing what was going on, but my brain calmed me back down in order to not smack her when she was giving me those injections. But yeah, and so, our brains really can get us through this or it can do the exact opposite. And so, I love that you with using EMDR, people are able to retrain how they're thinking about things.
Yeah, and you said something really interesting there about going to the dentist. One of the other really cool things about EMDR is it can be used for future events. And what I mean by that, you're having a medical procedure in 2 weeks and it's not going to be particularly comfortable, but it's something that you have to do. You can, over the course of the next 2 weeks, do, 2 or 3 sessions, something like focusing on procedure. It's called installation to make you more comfortable when you actually get to the situation, and you'll find it's a breeze. You find that you feel totally different about it. So EMDR, or more specifically virtual EMDR, can be used for all kinds of difficult future events, things that you're worried about, test anxiety, have to give a speech, any sort of future events that you work on, and it really works well for that kind of stuff.
Right.
So,
Well, and you mentioned that you didn't want to fly. That is clearly something that many people have a great deal of anxiety about. And so to be able to do this, and then I'm guessing what might also happen is you're actually at the airport, you start to get stressed, and you've got your phone, which then you can go online and you can do a quick EMDR session and calm yourself back down. Or even when you're sitting in your plane or in your seat in the plane.
Well, I mean, to be clear, I mean, just a few things. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. When I first did EMDR, it was I go on a 2-hour flight for business, and I was terrified to do it. And by doing about 6 in-person sessions, I felt just fine. And in fact, oddly enough, I live overseas now. Door to door to get back to Denver from Singapore is about 30 hours. By the time I get there. Yeah. And, with my fear of flying gone, in the last 5 years, I've been in 30 countries. I've seen of just unbelievable stuff in parts of the world. So, it's definitely worked for the. But as far as getting on the plane and all that kind of stuff, I don't have to do any of that anymore. I've dealt with it. The EMDR I got on the first flight. I want to point out, and this is pretty important, that you can't really do virtual EMDR on a phone. You need a larger
bigger screen. Okay.
To facilitate eye movements, and a phone it's just too small. I mean, I guess technically you could if you held it right up to your face. But,
well, and I would think you're getting a lot of distractions when it's just on a tiny little screen.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good point as well. Virtual EMDR is not something that you want to do on the bus on the way to work. You want to say, okay, I want to work on these kind of issues. Tonight after dinner, I'm going to shut myself in the spare bedroom in front of my laptop, and I'm going to spend 30 minutes or 20 or however long you choose and do a session. Something that there's really a goal at the end of it. I want to work on my PTSD symptoms and how I have anger outbreaks at my spouse, my children. So, you do those, let's say 6 sessions over the course of a month, and so it's not something that, like I said, you want to do on your commute or something like that. It's much more ideal to sort of take time out, go somewhere quiet and complete a session.
Right. As you were talking about this, I was thinking, it's as you were saying, it's very personal. You go off by yourself, you do it. And I think that's one of the issues that sometimes people have is they don't want to admit that they need assistance, that they might be struggling, all of these various things, especially if, say, they're the small business owner who's really trying to take care of their family. You don't want to stop and say, hey, I have problems. I need issues. And with something like this, like you said, that you can just go, people might think you're working, and so you're just, you're off. And the other thing that you mentioned was, our rational brain doesn't always help with this process. Fear of flying would be a great example.
Yeah.
We know in our rational brain how statistically safe flying is.
Yes.
You know, you can tell somebody until you're blue in the face the number of times that people are killed in crashes as opposed to how many people actually are safe every day and all of those things. But somebody's still going to be that one, you know, that one person. And now you add in the fact that, you know, in this pandemic, I mean, that is the big thing that I'm hearing people talk about for any type of public transportation, is getting on a very tightly enclosed space with people who have germs. Now, people have always had germs. I mean, you know, and again, back to that rationalization, you're always, you know, there, but, you know, thinking of sitting next to someone for even a 2-hour flight that could be asymptomatic. And, you know, I mean, the stress level just immediately ratcheted up. I'm not sure the travel industry will recover from all of this. You know, yeah, I mean, it's really going to be different. But again, our rational mind tells us one thing, while the other part of us goes, but that one person next to me could kill me. You know, and so I love this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really interesting about what you were saying earlier about the idea of just being able to work on your stuff whenever you want. And one of the unintentional results that we found of our research working with military vets, police officers, and first responders, and we didn't realize this. We had a program for a while where we'd given our program away for free to about 1,500, I think, vets, police officers, and first responders. And we've even given it away to EMDR therapists at the VA. One of the things that we didn't anticipate is this is a community of people who see themselves as being pretty tough.
Right. Cannot show any fear, any,
exactly.
You know.
And the last thing they want to do is sit down with a stranger and say, hey, let me tell you, but let me tell you some of the most personal, you know, the most unbelievable personal things about myself that make me emotional. So what we found with this particular community is they loved virtual EMDR because they didn't have to tell anyone else what working on. It's something that they could work on their own, and they could get results on their own. No interaction with a stranger, no, you know, weeping and telling someone your story, anything like that. And we didn't expect this at all when we started testing with veterans and law enforcement and first responders. It didn't even cross our mind that you know, this community might, you know, like to work by themselves. And then it turned out that was one of the things that they loved most about them.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, like you were saying, you're looking at your computer screen, you've got your headphones on, somebody looks at you, they're going to assume you're watching a movie, you know, something like that. So you're really doing it. And no one, you know, might ever know what's really happening.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all you really need is a laptop or a tablet, and then some headphones or earphones, and you know, you can get a session done. Some people choose to do longer sessions, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, but we find that more than 40% of people choose to do incredibly short sessions, only 20 minutes. So you know, it's convenient. You can really get a session done quite quickly. One interesting thing about this, by the way, not to go on a tangent, is until virtual EMDR came along, EMDR therapy was exclusively controlled by the therapy community, by EMDR therapists. So was 1-hour appointments. Those appointments once a week, unless you had money and could afford twice a week. Our program, for example, it's unlimited sessions for $69. And so this really opened the door for people to say, do shorter sessions. You know, I only do a 20-minute session. I don't want to, you know, so deep into my trauma and a really long session. To do sessions whenever they needed to do a session, and then to do sessions more frequently. So it really eliminated the need for people to just work on their therapeutic issues or their trauma once a week. It really opened the doors for them to start doing it at their own pace when they felt like they were ready to do it. So.
You know, and you talked about first responders and military and police and people like that thinking, oh, we're tough, we can work through it. I mean, so many times we've all been told that, have a stiff upper lip, buck up,
Yeah.
all these various things. And so admitting that we need help really is very difficult, or even knowing when we need help. I think that might be the other thing, is we all think, oh, it's not that serious. It's, all these various things. And so I was looking on your website, and I didn't have a chance to delve into these. And so that's why, I was wanting to know. So you've got a bunch of self-tests. Talk us through a little bit about some of those.
Yeah. Oddly enough, that door is only beginning to open. Right now, we have some pretty basic self-tests that you can take on our website, which is virtualemdr.com for free. So, for example, we have a PTSD test, a career burnout test, the depression test.
Mm-hmm.
We have the ACE test. That's the Adverse Childhood Experiences test. It's only 10 questions. It's from the CDC. It's 10 questions about your childhood. It's considered to be a gold standard trauma test. In fact, it's absolutely horrifying to talk about this. They can directly correlate you having a high score on the ACE test to a shorter lifespan, disease, a massive increase in the rate of suicide, sudden death. I mean, it's really terrible. So, yeah, we have all these tests on our website, and the exciting thing is, before the end of this year, we're going to be starting with a whole bunch of other really common psych tests in inventories, and we're even going to be having online groups. So it'll be a group like a Zoom group where people with a similar situation get together. It's 7 or 8 people with anxiety, that are overseen by a therapist volunteer, and that same group will be able to go and do EMDR sessions on their own in between the weekly talk sessions.
Wow.
So really opening the door with more and more testing. It's taken us really a while, though. It seems like in business, when you say we're going to do something in a month, it inevitably takes 2 or 3 months. Nothing
or
ever.
A pandemic hits.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So.
And I'm looking at some of these tests, and I'm it's like one of them is, are you depressed or just sad? Or are you in a codependent relationship? Are you at risk for burnout? All these various things, which again, we're all thinking, oh, it's okay, everybody else is going through this. This is normal. This is natural. Well, it could be, but that still doesn't mean you don't need help.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I realize that this is a business podcast, so it's a little bit unusual for us to
but I think, business people go through this just as much, if maybe not more, because of the pressures we put on ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the things that I want to say, to anyone that listens to this, I know you may be expected to hear about business this week, and you're hearing about therapy this week instead, but it's so crucial to take care of your mental health, especially when you're a business person. I tell you firsthand that, I sit in my office a million hours a day. It's not always a healthy thing to do, but I a lot of work. I have to run this business. So it's really important that we find ways to take care of ourselves, whether it's something like virtual EMDR, whether it's getting out and going for a walk for an hour, something like that, or it's calling somebody that you feel like you can really connect with and that you trust, and talk to them about what's going on. And really, it's more important than ever, because you not only are running a business, but for a lot of people, there's an additional stress with everything that's going on in the world. And a lot of us, we have families to support important things in our lives. So I really encourage people to step up and do some things to take care of themselves.
Right. And I was thinking, many of us are a business unto ourselves. We're the business. And what I'm trying to say is, we don't have employees. We might have consultants, we might have people we work with. But right now, if you have employees, for the most part, and I'm gonna take a leap here and say the vast majority are stressed, because even if your business happens to be doing well during this pandemic, whatever it is, your employees are still stressed because they might have their kids at home. They might have their spouse at home, all of these various things. You're having to adapt to, all of a sudden your employees are not working in the office. They're working online. You're responsible for all of these people. When we hear about all these furloughs and things, I mean, I can't imagine that amount of stress that someone is going through. Long gone are the days of the uncaring, unfeeling boss that, they just want to get the job done. They care about their employees. They care what they're going through. And of course, they're going through all of it themselves too. But, so, being a business owner, manager, even if you're just head of a department or manage one other person, this is an incredibly stressful time.
It is, yeah. I mean, I was just on, it's nighttime here. It's 10 o'clock at night. I think it's 10 where you are. It's the exact, no, it's
it's almost 10 a.m. for me. Yep.
Yeah. So it's the end of my day. I was actually on a Zoom business meeting today. It was a pretty worldwide meeting. We had US, Singapore, India, and New Zealand. And, one of the people on the meeting, and this is just how it is now. This is the new normal. You hear their kids in the background. Hear them, the kids were going crazy. The kids were going crazy. And he's a great guy and everything, but he just blew up at a certain point, yelling at to shut up. Not because he's a horrible guy. It's just because life has changed. I mean, we have the same sort of space, distance, even, the comfortable timeouts that we used to. So yeah, it's really important now, really more so than ever, that people take care of themselves and take care of their mental health.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing about what they call Zoom fatigue, where it's mental and physical, where you have sat all day on Zoom, which we all know just sitting at your chair is not good. But then there's also the stress, because this is great to be able to see people, but there is a little bit difference. Clearly we're not able to read a lot of body language. We are stressed about what's going on behind us, and in the other rooms, is the kid gonna appear? Is the cat gonna appear? It's fun for me when I'm doing interviews to see some of these things. I was interviewing somebody a month or so ago, and her dogs kept going back and forth behind her in the room. I could see the whole room, and I just thought it was the cutest thing in the world. I happened to mention it to her, and it totally freaked her out. She thought it was so unprofessional, and I said, "Oh gosh, no, that was certainly not my intention." I said, "I thought it was cute." But we have all of these additional things that are going on. And, so if you can spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you need, sitting in front of your computer screen with your headphone on, doing EMDR, or, maybe you need something else. We need to be open to saying we need to do this. And I think maybe that's the biggest thing, is we need to be strong enough to admit that we need help on occasion.
Yeah. And, I want to be clear about something. Virtual EMDR can be used for the kind of things that we're talking about, anger outbursts, stress, all that kind of stuff. But EMDR is much more typically used for more serious things like that. So PTSD in your past, and that can be from being in an auto accident, being military, being a police officer, being a victim of a crime, having abusive childhood, whatever it is. We have Virtual EMDR has a addictions program for people struggling with addictive behavior, serious depression, anxiety. We have a grief and loss program for people who, maybe they've had someone that's close to them and they can't seem to get past it and get back to a more normal life. And grief is not something that you just magically get past.
Right.
I mean, this is more of a program for someone, time is going by, you just can't function at all. I mean, so EMDR, more specifically in this case, virtual EMDR, tends to work with really difficult problems. And we actually see that the majority of clients who we have signing up for it are using it for those more serious issues, and not just day-to-day depression or malaise or anxiety or those kind of things.
And But what I can imagine is that if you kind of had that underlying challenge that you were facing, the pandemic is making it worse, because we're self, or we're isolating, whether it's that we're doing it ourselves or we're being told we have to, and so then you focus on it. You just have more time to sit and think about the things that happen, good and bad, in your life.
The pandemic, again, has really changed a lot of things. We've really grown as a company over the course of the pandemic. And for example, the daily emails that we get every day, I get emails. I give out my personal email address to a lot of people, and I encourage people to contact me personally. But every day I get emails from people where they're, just kind of spilling their guts out about what's going wrong with them, and asking what they can do to feel better. And we're also almost every day getting more and more emails from therapists looking for new solutions, how to help. Because not only are we growing, but therapists are seeing more and more people who are in need of therapy. Right? And a lot has to do with isolating. We're not, interacting with other people the way that we used to. So,
well, and I can see that continuing, not in a bad way, but when I've been talking with a lot of people, just in general on this program, things like that, since the pandemic hit, many of us are thinking, and it is looking more like this will happen, that working from home is going to become more normal. And so, so we're just going to be isolated more. But that's because, businesses are thinking, wow, this worked really pretty good. So why are we paying rent on all of this space? It's easier for us to have employees at home, as long as the work gets done. Really, who cares? And so if you, and which one of the cool things is then, we're figuring, I might be able to work better at midnight than at 9 a.m. And if I get my job done, who cares? If we have to be home because we have kids that are home, that's going to be another thing that many people are going to have to deal with. But and we can expand the workforce, the work environment. If you're working virtually, you're in Singapore, I'm in Atlanta, all these various places. So we're no longer going to be constrained, especially if you have an office, with having to be in one certain proximity, so that's going to be great. I think so many people are going to think that is wonderful. Now there are, but there are as many people who are like, no, I need to be in an office. I need that interaction. I need those things. But I think we are going to be, and see people being more alone, which comes back to the fact that then they have time to stop and think about the traumas that have happened in their life, all of these various things. And so that's, I really do see more and more a need for services like yours.
Yeah. It's funny for the business people who listen to this podcast. Having a business, a home business, online business, it's amazing. Like I feel so lucky to be in the situation that I'm in. And I encourage anyone out there to start your own business rather than working for somebody else. But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. It's a blessing and a curse. I remember the first 6 months or so when I started virtual EMDR. At that point, we were losing money. Like, we didn't even know what we were doing. We were still testing our product. In fact, we were testing that version of our product on volunteers from the 12-step community. So, people, Narcotics Anonymous, people who, sure, I'll try it out. So anyways, it's a real double-edged sword, because I remember in that first 6 months, I was so happy to be doing my own thing. I was so happy to be sitting at work with a cup of coffee and still wearing the pajamas I wore. Right. It's just great. I didn't even brush my teeth this morning, whatever. That's gross. Sorry.
No, I think that's more and more, we're like, I asked somebody, I said, so do you brush your teeth before you Zoom?
Just so they're shiny. No, I quickly found over the course of 6 months that I really missed
Mhm.
the, previously I was interacting with people in an office.
Right.
Uh, I would sit and have lunch with my coworkers every day. I would hear stories about, my coworkers' kids and spouses and what was going on in their lives and all that kind of stuff. And that was just gone
Mhm.
when I went into business for
Mhm.
myself. So that again, it's a real double-edged sword. I was still encouraging anyone to go into business for themselves because it's amazing,
Right.
but yeah, you really got to keep an eye on how you're feeling.
Right. Yeah. I was talking with somebody earlier this week. We have started in-person networking again here in Georgia.
Yeah,
Now, it's limited. I think we can have 50 people, social distancing, all those various things. I haven't been happy with looking at the photos that people are posting because they're not wearing masks, they're not social distancing. So I won't go. I mean, that's just, and but as much as I miss seeing those people, I'm actually not missing going because I'm able to better spend my time is maybe what I'm trying to get spit out. I'm not having the 45-minute drive each way. I'm not eating it's pretty good food at all the groups that I go to,
yeah,
and I miss the programs, but there's certainly ways that we can, do online programs, things like that. And of course, when we go to networking things, we tend to just go to talk to the people that you already know. So that's, so rather than spending 3 hours at, say, a Chamber of Commerce event, including commute time and all of those things, spending 3 hours on LinkedIn, really connecting with the people I need to connect to is a much better use of my time.
yeah.
But I'm not having that human interaction. And as everybody who knows me knows, I am an extremely social person. The fact that I can't hug people really bothers, and I was just at the doctor yesterday and we had to do the elbow bump thing. And I'm like, but yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this. How much will we go back to doing things in person? How much online? But I think our mental health really is going to take a hit in this, and we need to figure out ways that we can do this. And again, I think that what you have is perfect. So here in just the last couple minutes, there is a fee. I mean, you don't do this just out of the goodness of your heart, but it's very modest. I
Yes.
saw that and I thought, wow, this is very doable. But tell us a little bit more about virtual EMDR and a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, regarding a fee, we charge a fraction of
Mhm.
even a single session.
Right. Less
EMDR,
for a month than somebody would charge for an hour. Mhm.
and that's as many sessions as you want to do in a month.
Mhm.
And we have the people who are real go-getters who wake up at 5 a.m. and jog 10 miles every day. And some of those people will say, I did a session every day for 14 days and it totally changed everything
Wow.
for me.
Mhm.
Other people who, sort of revisiting difficult emotions
Mhm.
it is not such an easy thing to do. And,
Mhm.
those who will do is, a couple sessions a week or something like that. But
Mhm.
yeah, so we only cost a fraction
Mhm.
of what it costs to see an in-person
Mhm.
EMD therapist. And I would just encourage anyone who's struggling with depression, anxiety, and trauma symptoms. Those are the top three things
Mhm.
actually to see for people coming to virtual
Mhm.
EMDR. Anyone struggling with those or addiction symptoms, grief and loss, fear and phobias,
Mhm.
we have specialized programs or protocols for
Mhm.
each of those things. So I would encourage people to just have a look at our
Mhm.
website, virtualemdr.com.
Mhm.
We also have a lot of great YouTube videos if you want to learn
Oh.
about EMDR, the
Mhm.
communities that are affected by
Mhm.
it, and even see an overview of what an EMDR
Mhm.
session is like. One other thing, really quick, I would like to give out 21-month subscriptions to Business Power Hour listeners. The best way to do that is for you to just email me directly, Jeff
Okay.
at virtualemdr.com. Just say, I heard you on Business Power Hour. You said that you were giving away free 1-month subscriptions. So the first 20 people that do that, I will email them back with a coupon so that they can try
Perfect.
some EMDR
Thank you.
sessions
Thank you.
themselves. Yeah.
And we're not saying the amount specifically because prices change. People watch and listen to this program years from now. And so, we don't want to say one thing and then, have it be different a couple of years from now, but it really is incredibly affordable, folks. When I was looking at this, I thought, wow, that is a terrific price.
I would be ecstatic if we're still around years from now and you call me and say you heard me on Business Power Hour, I will honor because I'm so glad that we'll still be around. I mean, we have long-term goals. I start working with veterans on a larger scale, VA. Right now we provided all the EMDR therapists at the VA with the virtual EMDR therapist program, but we feel like we can help hundreds of thousands of people who are struggling with trauma and PTSD. And right now we're doing about 10,000 sessions a month.
Wow.
And I really think that we can do a lot more and help a lot of people who can't afford to see an EMDR therapist, who live rurally, or just don't have a means to go at someone else's office. So I'm really excited about the prospect of still being around in years. So
great. I love it. And I still remember one of the things that my acupuncturist said. And, he said, if it works, that's great. If it doesn't, then we find something else. And to me, this is the same thing. If it works, that's absolutely fabulous, but there's no harm done if it doesn't. So why not check it out? If you're having issues, if you're having challenges, definitely go to virtualemdr.com and see if it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, and actually it really does work well. We track some basic metrics of every virtual EMDR session it's done. And one of those is before and after distress. So that's rated on a scale of 1 to 10. If you're a 10, that means your distress level is through the roof. You're absolutely upset about something. And then we track that same metric at the end of the session. And we go between 40 and 60% of our users, this is in any given session, experience a 3 to 5 point decrease in their level of emotional distress with just one session.
Wow.
And clear, I mean, that's data that's based on 30, 40,000 sessions. I can't be exact on how many sessions it was. I don't have it in front of me, but that's solid data.
A big number.
Yeah, that's solid data on our program works for people. So.
Right. I love it. Well, Jeff, we'll definitely have to talk about this again, because obviously it is going to be an ongoing type of concern that and so you'll be more than happy to have you on again and talk about this. But until then, do you have any final thoughts for everyone?
I do. I just want to tell people this is for not only people struggling with COVID, small business owners, but again, and I sort of said this before, it's really important to take care of yourself. And honestly, it doesn't matter if you sign up for virtual EMDR or not. There's a lot of different things that you can do to make yourself feel better. Find someone that you trust, that you connect with, pick up the phone, talk to somebody about how you're feeling, about what's going on with your life, get an appointment with a therapist, go for a nice long walk, do some deep breathing, but just make sure that you make an effort to take care of yourself every day. Now, if people do want to do EMDR, that's great for us. EMDR is getting more and more popular. It's getting explosively popular to the point where I'll meet random people and start talking about what I do for a living. And they say, I've actually heard of your company. I know who you guys are.
Oh, that's always good.
It's amazing to hear how it's going. So, EMDR is definitely one option for people who are struggling, but who want to modify their emotional difficulties, mental health issues. But yeah, again, all the simple stuff works as well. So I would just encourage people during this difficult time to make sure that they take care of themselves. You're not alone out there, and that there are resources out there to help you with whatever you're working through. So
great. I love it. I love it. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having an absolutely wonderful discussion with Jeff Tejcek of Virtual EMDR. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thanks, Deb.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.